In this lesson, we are going to lay out our UVs overall, but before we do that, I think it's a good idea to go ahead at this stage and begin to clean up our models and our geometry. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to marquee select everything, and I'm going to go delete by type history because I want to get rid of clean off my geometry. I want to go ahead and go to freeze transformations. Go to modify, not select. Freeze transformations, make sure everything is frozen. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Command G. I'm going to group everything, and I'm going to call this group Plane Geo group. Everything else I'm going to delete, except for the template group, which is, as we know, right here. And the template group, I'm going to delete history on that. And that gets rid of that little plane group from the beginning. I don't actually need my template anymore, but I'll keep it. All right, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here, I'm going to open this up, and I've got all these revolved surfaces. So I'm going to click on here and I'm going to rename. I'll call this, undo that. I'll call it Prop Geo. And I always like to put a Geo at the end. And this will be Cockpit Geo. And that way, if for some reason I need to access it through a mil script, I can always use the wildcard to use the Geo tag to select all of that. We'll call this Body Geo. I'm just going to go down Elevator Geo, and I'm going to go ahead and pause this right now. And what we will do is I'll go ahead and rename everything because, you guys know the process for doing that. So I'll rename it. You can rename it whatever you like. But I'll do that, finish that, and come back. Okay, and we're back. So basically what I've done is I've gone and I have taken all of this geometry and I've made it, I've renamed it. I'll go to my right view and I'll grab the group. And I'll take this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move this down to, if it will let me, I'm going to hold down D and X. And I'm just going to move it straight down here. And the reason I want to do that is because now that means I can basically rotate this from the wheels, which is kind of where I want. And I can take this and I can bring this back into my geometry and then freeze my transformations. And pretty much once I've done that, keep expecting the freeze transformation to be there. And once I've done that, now I'm good to go. So basically we've cleaned up our geometry. What I want to do now is I want to talk a little bit about the UV map. So I'm going to bring up my UV editor, and I say I got this big propeller here, and if I select everything, I'm going to see I've got seems like a snowstorm in my UV texture editor. And that's because all of these shells have been laid out according to their own the size of them in relation to the image, to the geometry itself. So what I want to do is think about is how I'm going to want to split this up. If I want to split this up, I'm going to make this have this entire model be textured as though it is out of wood. And so as a result, it's going to have wood grain running through it, and I'm going to want certain things to happen, and I'm going to have it be a certain size. And that wood grain, that scale, is really quite important because that is going to give the viewer a clue as to what the size of the model is. If you think about it, if the grain is really, really big, and you can tell, like, for example, it's pine wood, well, that means the model is going to be really, really small. But if the grain is really, really small, it means you've made it out of a piece of wood that's either really old or it's a bigger model. So that's kind of why it's important. So what I'm going to do first is initially I'm going to go to polygons, and I'm going to go to layout, and I'm going to go to layout options. Okay, so what I want to do with this is I'm going to go to single or multiple objects non-overlapping. I'm going to click on world for my prescale. Flip reversed is good. Scale model will be uniform. Shell stacking will be shape, that's fine. Rotate. For now, I'm going to say none. Okay, and the spacing presets, I don't really worry about that. In fact, if I really wanted to, I could reset my settings and it'll go to a 512 map. That's okay too. All right, so I'm going to go back to world. I reset my settings, so I'll go to world, rotate none, and I'll just click apply. All right, now what I've got here is I now have this map. Every piece of every shell is laid out, is laid out basically into the shell, but it's done kind of a poor job. It hasn't filled the space quite the way I want it. The good news is if we've made sure all of our shells are flipped properly, we shouldn't have anything that's really, really small inside of our, everything should be the proper scale. Let me try object. That's better. So if I click on object, prescale it on object, that will give me a little bit better scaling. Now, here's the thing though, if I want the wood grain to be going down the body, I'm going to want it to be going across my propeller. So I'm going to do something like go to UVs, and then I'm going to shell, and I'm going to rotate. Now this is the interior, that interior void inside of the inside of the body. I want that to be really small. So I'm going to shell that, and I'm going to shrink it down a lot because I don't really need to see a lot of that. And the wings, I want if the grain is going to be going down the body, I'm going to want the wings to be, actually what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to change the body. I'm going to rotate the body. And what we're also going to find, unfortunately, is when we do the way we did the maps on the gear is not the best. So we're going to wind up changing that. This piece right here is going to need to be shelled as well. I'm pretty sure that's the way it goes. And again, I'm not worried about the rotations. I'm not worried about the overall sizes as yet, because I'm going to wind up bringing that into play. Okay, now there may be things which, I think I'll rotate this around 100 degrees. There may be things that are going to wind up looking weird once we get the wood texture on there. I don't know. We'll have to see. What I'm going to do as a final thing in this lesson is I'm going to go ahead and lay these out. I've got the layout command up here. So, but this time I'm going to go to prescale of none because I don't want that small piece to change, and I don't want there to be any rotations. So now when we lay things out, that's not a bad layout. It's not super, super great, but it's not bad. Now, here's the thing. If you wanted to, let's say I wanted to change, and I wanted to make the wings out of a different color or a different type of wood, and the elevator and maybe the rudder, I would want to lay them out in one particular. Want to have them be in one layout. See, right now we've laid everything out, and we've got our individual shapes. Okay, and they're all laid out in relation to one another. That's going to help us keep our scale correct. But if I wanted, I could take these wings, let's say, go back to object mode, and I could lay them out individually, make them out of a different, and then texture them differently and with a different scale of wood or a different type of wood, and they would look different. So I could do that, and that would work out pretty well. But we're not going to do that in this case. I just want to note that that's a possibility. Okay, so in this lesson, what we've done is we've laid out this, we've renamed everything, and we've cleaned our file up. We've renamed our geometry, and we've laid out all of the UV shells that make up our model. We've rescaled that interior void because we don't need it. And in the next lesson, we will think about texturing and think about a texture for our plane.